You decide to do a webinar, it can be really tempting to focus all your energy on the webinar itself, what you're going to say during the webinar, how you're going to engage with your attendees. But there's actually something that is just as important, and that is how you're going to promote the webinar, how you're going to get people into that event, because you could deliver the most engaging, informative webinar in the world that could change people's lives, but if nobody's there to hear it, what good is it? So today we're going to talk about the fundamentals of webinar promotion and some more advanced tips for getting people to show up to your webinar. Here we go. Hello, I am Horse's Mouth's Doug Pierce. I am joined by Devin Kropp, and this is the Advisor's Digital Toolbox, where we talk about the tips, tech, and tools that you can use to better engage with your clients and build your business online. So Devin is joining us from a remote location today. So fingers crossed that her connection will stay strong, but we'll just roll with it here. So far, so good. Okay, so webinar promotion. First, let's just start off by acknowledging the fact that you've got to promote your webinar or nobody's going to show up. If you think that you're just going to do it and everybody's going to find out about it and show up, you are wrong. That's not how it works. You've got to let people know about it, and you've definitely got to promote it more than you're probably comfortable with. Like, you've got to send more emails, you've got to do more promotional content than you're going to even be comfortable with, at least at the beginning. I think there's this sense that, I don't want to I sent one email, that's good. They know about it. No, you need to do more than that, because we're all busy and people might not even have saw that first email. So promotion is important. Let's talk a little bit about, when we talk about getting better attendance rates, what do we mean? So it's pretty standard for 25% to 35% attendee rate, based upon how many people you got to register for your webinar. I think that's a pretty good metric that people get. But that said, getting close to that 50% attendee rate is definitely doable, and that's good. That's good. If you're getting 50% of your signups who show up to your webinar, that is solid. And if you're getting above that, well, let me know. I'm going to bring you on the stream, because you need to be talking about what you're doing, right? That's really good. That's really good. So let's move right to the fundamentals. These are the things that you've got to do, frankly, if you want people to show up to your webinar. And the first thing is that you have got to invite them. Mostly this is going to be, emails that you send to your list or your lists, people who get your newsletter, people who have, downloaded your lead magnet or whatever, people that, know you, have connected with you in some way, and it's just natural for you to invite them to this webinar. That's a must. You've got to do that. That's the audience that you definitely have got to hit. And then from there, we can then move on to registration. So you need to have a way for people to register for your webinar. And the good news is that most webinar providers offer this, built in. Zoom, GoToWebinar, Big Marker, they all have got it. And you've got to make sure that you're using and you have it set up, that registration process correctly, and that it includes the ability for them to, when they register, to download and set up a calendar appointment in their Outlook calendar or their Google Calendar, Yahoo Calendar, whatever. That's really important to get people to show up, because if somebody puts that calendar appointment in their calendar, it's going to do the work for you, a lot of the work for you, to get people to sign up and to remember that you have this thing. Now, Devin, let's talk on-ramp time, because I think a lot of people might be wondering, well, okay, when should I start? From the date of my webinar, how far out should I begin, talking about this thing and getting people to register? And from what I've seen, typically the earlier the better, up to a point. What I have seen is 5 weeks is a good amount of time. I think if you get too far, earlier than 5 weeks out, it begins to be a little, people are just going to forget about it. It's a little bit too far out. But if you wait, too long, you're definitely cutting off the amount of people that could potentially join, because you just don't have enough time to, keep getting in front of those people and piquing their interests and getting them to sign up. So 5 weeks tends to be a pretty good spot to shoot for if you're first getting into, trying to, promote your webinar. What do you feel about that, Devin? Is that consistent with what you've seen?
It depends. So I think 5 weeks is, as early as I would start promoting. Like you said, I wouldn't do any earlier than that. And at 5 weeks, my promotion might look a little bit different than it would 2 weeks out, per se. So 5 weeks, I think 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out, that's a great time to hit the lists that you already have. So if you're inviting clients to it, you want to invite them. If you have a prospecting list, send it out that early. If you're going to do things like social media advertising, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you're going to want to do that closer to the actual webinar. You don't want to be advertising on Facebook 5 weeks out, because that might not be as warm of an audience, and they, they're more likely to be the ones who sign up and then forget about it and don't show up. So I would say 5 weeks is great to start with some promotions like emails and putting on your website. Closer to about 2 weeks, I would do more advanced options like paid advertisements on different platforms.
So Barbara says 5 weeks seems too long. And keeping in mind what Devin just talked about, where you do need to evolve your communication from, when you do start that long out, it does need to be different, like what Devin was just talking about, from when you start to get closer. But I mean, we're going to get a little bit into some of our more advanced strategy about what you could, that 5 week period, what you might be doing. We'll get to some more concrete examples there. But I don't think 5 weeks is too long.
Another thing I'll add is if you are someone who is doing a webinar every single month, maybe 5 weeks is too long because you have 2 events in that time frame. But if you're not doing them that often, you want to have as much lead up time as you can. But if you are doing a webinar every month, I would say 3 to 2 weeks out is maybe what I would do instead of the 5 weeks. I think 5 weeks is good if you're not doing them so regularly.
Yeah, because you don't want the thunder, you don't want one webinar steal the thunder from another.
Right.
Either. And I do think it's true that the closer the webinar is, the more you can kind of get people's interest. I do think you do see a lot of a greater registration rates when you do send a direct response email in the days ahead of your webinar. I do think that those rates tend to be higher because it is an upcoming thing. It's happening this week, or it's happening, in a couple days, tomorrow. Definitely, you're going to get, I think, better response rates the closer it is to the webinar. But when you look at the amount of people you can get, trickling in, coming in when you start 5 weeks out, when you've got this whole promotional campaign, overall, you will get more people if you start earlier. But yeah, there are diminishing returns for starting that far out, but that's why you don't go beyond five weeks. Yeah, that's a great point. I did want to mention for people who maybe you don't use Zoom, or you don't have Zoom webinar, or another webinar provider that offers registration or the ability for people to produce a calendar appointment for people. There is a service that I found recently called addevent.com, which is kind of like a third-party service that'll let you offer people a calendar appointment. So I thought that was pretty neat if you're kind of doing a homebrew approach to getting people to register for your webinar.
One thing, can I add something quickly about registration? Just because I've seen this happen multiple times. If you set up a registration page, either on your own or through your platform, test it, and see what people are getting when they sign up for the webinar. Because I have worked with advisors who haven't done that, and either maybe the registration link wasn't working correctly, or the email that was being automated from the service didn't have as much information as they wanted to. So please be sure that you test it and that you're getting everything that anyone who signs up for your webinar is going to get, and that you're happy with the information that is being shared. It's really, really important. And when you're doing all these steps, I know it's easy to forget that, but you definitely want to know what people are getting when they sign up for your webinar.
Yeah, testing is so important. And not just you too. If you can send it to other people on your team, get them to go through the process, because they're using a different browser, they're on a different computer. It could be different for them. They're just a different person clicking on different things naturally. So the more people you can kind of help you test, the better. But at least you yourself need to go through the process step by step and see everything's in place, everything's working. That's a great point. Okay, and so then the next thing I say, after people register, you want to have that thank you to confirm they've registered, and then they automatically get sent a thank you, a registration confirmation, letting them know. Yeah, and this is typically where they're going to find the calendar appointment. But it's just important to mention that you definitely want to give have a confirmation email after they register, just confirming with them that, yeah, they're good, reminder of the date, the calendar appointment, things like that. That's really important. And then the next thing would be reminders, because don't think that just because somebody registers for your webinar that, oh yeah, they're good. They're they're definitely gonna show up, because even though they were interested enough at the moment to register for your webinar, the topic sounded great to them. Things happen, and life intervenes, and so then by the actual date of your webinar. Of course, this is even more important when you do start reaching people, up to 5 weeks out. By the time your webinar does roll around, it's gone. Right? They've totally forgotten about it. And so the reminders are just reminders, letting people know, hey, it's coming up. Devin, I'll be interested to know your thoughts about the frequency and the timing of those. But I think that ideally you want at least 3. And of course, this varies depending on your capacity and your, email channel, what you can do. But I think that the day before, the day of, and really as you're beginning, like hour before to as you're beginning, is a really good trifecta of email reminders. And of course, when you are promoting 5 weeks out, maybe you have one a week before as well, to remind people. But as the webinar, and don't think that this is, I think people are like, whoa, that's way too much. That's way too many emails. Like people are gonna, no, it's not. Remember, people opted in for this. They registered for this webinar. You're doing them a service by reminding them of it. So don't think like, oh man, they're gonna like blacklist me from their email, report me as spam. No, they want these reminders. They want to attend your event. That's why they registered. And you need to, like I said, day before, day of, earlier on in the day, and then hour before, or even as you're beginning. What do you think about that, Devin?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I agree with the point that if you are advertising 5 weeks out, then you should do one a week before the event too. And I think the point you made about people worrying like they're emailing too much is, I see that all the time. And like you said, it's not true. People are really busy, and we have to assume that we are competing with hundreds of other things that they could be doing at that time. It's so easy to forget about something that you really need to be reminding them. And if you are worried about, it coming off too much, you can also include some teaser content in those reminder emails. Like if you have a handout that you're going to be mentioning during the webinar, send that out a week before, the day before. That way it looks like, oh, I'm sending this in preparation of the webinar. You can read a little bit about what I'm going to cover, and that will kind of re-spark that interest, especially if it's someone who signed up 4 weeks ago. Getting them excited about it again is a great way to use that reminder email. And also, people lose links and emails all the time. So making sure it's in their inbox multiple times, and especially I think that hour before is so crucial, because that's when you're like, oh yeah, I really want to attend this, and now I'm going to make sure I do it. So I totally agree that you really can't over remind people these days. I mean, you don't want to be doing it every day for 5 weeks, but leading the few days leading up to it, send those reminders. I heard something from someone saying, I think in this business especially, we advisors worry about coming off too strong with too many emails, but it actually takes like 7 to 10 touches for an average person to take action. So for reminders, keep that in mind, and also for your promotional emails, keep that in mind, that you might feel like you're hitting your list too much. You probably are not hitting them enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the key thing with the reminders is, like I said before, is that they opted in for this. Like they're cool
Yes.
with it. They're good with it. And I like how and there's nothing you do, like it just makes it so easy when you send that, like, hey, we're starting like now email with the link right there to join. You're making it really easy for people to attend, and that is super important. The easier, the better. And Devin, I liked how you said that you need to keep people excited. Those who like registered earlier on, you got to keep them excited for the webinar, and how like having like a handout to like just engage them helps with that. And I also think it just, along with keeping them excited, it like reminds them of why they registered in the first place, right? Because they, originally they liked what they saw, right? They liked what they were going to learn, what you're going to talk about, and at that moment when they registered, that was really clear to them. It was very, very tangible to them. But as time goes on, they might forget, and they might see. And if your emails are like very utilitarian, they might forget, like, what, why did I register for this again? Whatever. You don't want,
Yeah,
you don't want that.
that's too why I said to test, because sometimes the emails that are generated from like Zoom or GoToMeeting are just look really boring. So if you can kind of create your own and not just rely on that template, and make it look a little bit more personalized, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, anything you can do to make it look like the email is coming from an actual human being is good. It's good. We like to deal with human beings and not robots for the most part. Okay, so that kind of covered it for what I had for the like the fundamentals. Like you've got to have, the invitations, the registration, calendar appointments, the registration confirmation, and then the reminders in place. Those are like the key things to drive attendance. You really should have all of those things in place to get people there. And so if you guys have any questions about any of those things, or you want to share what you do, like your kind of tip that gets people to show up for your webinars, let us know. But we are going to segue now into some of the more, I call it advanced strategies, but they're just maybe more in depth. They require a little more planning and an effort on your part, but they will produce more results. And maybe just start off with, social media. You want to let people know about your upcoming webinar or event on social media. Let your audience know. I do think maybe when people hear that, they're like, oh man, so that means I gotta go out on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, and you don't have to do that. That could be overwhelming unless you have somebody on your team who's doing that for you. But just concentrate on the platform where your people are, right? Where your clients and your would-be clients hang out. That's where you want to just be doubling down on that platform. You're going to get the most, bang for your time buck there. And maybe don't worry so much about the other platforms. What do you think? What do you think about that, Devin?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes when we think about social media, we get too caught up in being everywhere. And honestly, it's better to be fully present on one platform than it is to just kind of touch, each one and move on. Because if you've tuned into any of our streams before, when we've talked about Facebook or social media, it's all about building a funnel and engagement on that platform. So if you're just hopping on one, hopping on the other, and you're not building out that funnel for people to move through,
Yeah.
you're wasting your time.
Yeah, you're just piecing out like, yeah, here's my thing, join it, see ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't done any nurturing to tell people who you are, why they should care, what you're going to be doing. So I think that's really a good point of focusing on where your people are. It's probably Facebook or LinkedIn. And just starting there, you don't have to do everything right now. Remember, you're emailing all your lists, you're hitting people organically that way. This is a supplemental thing to get new prospects. So we don't need to be everywhere. We just need to really focus on one area and make sure we're doing it to its full potential.
Yeah, and two, like even if you did, have your invitation, you went around to all the different platforms and, you posted there, each platform has its own way of doing things, right? Its own vibe, its own way that people want to be engaged when they're on it. So it's going to take, the point I'm getting at is to post on all these different platforms. It's going to take more time because you're going to have to optimize your messaging and your invite for the platform. So just another reason to double down on the platforms where your audience is. And then next up, Devin, I want to talk about ads. And I guess we could talk, about Facebook ads. Should people be doing for a live webinar? Let me ask you this: for a live webinar, is it effective, or should people be doing, or advisors be using Facebook ads to drive registrations for a live webinar?
So I would say yes, with a couple of caveats. I think that Facebook advertising can be really powerful for live webinars if it, again, is part of your funnel. Often, inviting people who have never heard of your business to a live webinar on Facebook is not going to go well. You might get a couple, but it's really not the ideal way to be using Facebook advertising for webinars. So when Doug and I spoke earlier about 5 weeks out, and I mentioned, you're not going to be doing all forms of advertising 5 weeks out, you're going to build up to it. I really was talking about Facebook ads because no, you do not want to be running a Facebook ad for a live webinar for 5 weeks. That is just honestly a waste of your money, because if someone signs up 5 weeks in advance, they are not coming to your webinar 5 weeks later. I can pretty much guarantee you that. But what you can be doing is creating a funnel for that webinar. So say you're doing a webinar on taxes. 5 weeks out, I would start a campaign on Facebook advertising, and I would say, okay, what is a white paper, or if you're a Horse's Mouth member, an article reprint that I can take and I can create that as like a free download for people. And I would advertise that. So I would, make them fill in their information and then they get that free download. That's a really easy ask for people, right? Like they're much more comfortable to be like, yeah, I'll sign up for this white paper rather than I'm going to schedule an hour of my time for this person that I've never heard of and attend their webinar live. Just like think about that as if you were the consumer. Like that's kind of a big ask. So I would say, hit them with that first funnel, that first piece of downloading a white paper. And then, 2 weeks out, everyone who's downloaded that white paper, hit them with an ad for your live webinar. They're already interested in the topic. They've heard of you. They've read it. They know that you're legitimate. It's much more likely that they are then going to say, this person's worth an hour of my time. So yeah, it is more, there's more things included in the steps, but you're going to have much more success of actually getting people to show up to your webinar. You might, again, you're not going to get 100% of people to sign up to show up. It might be a smaller number of people that you're even advertising to at that point because you're down farther in the funnel, but they are a much warmer audience than just like random people on Facebook who are in your zip codes. So that is my long answer to should you advertise for live.
So well, you're kind of going right where I was headed next, which is you're talking about marketing funnel. I'm essentially meaning the same thing when I'm talking about like a content promotional campaign, where for like a month out from the webinar, maybe like each week you come out with one piece of content that's related to what you're going to be talking about in the webinar, and this is totally free. It's you're giving value to people, you're educating people on something, and that this is a topic that your core audience, or the people at least you want to show up to your webinar, they're going to find this interesting. And then at the end of this, and this could be a podcast, this could be a pre-recorded video, this could be a live stream, this could be an article, like Devin said, the article, like the horse's mouth article reprints, just a piece of content related to the subject matter of your webinar. And then at the end, you have a call to action to register for the webinar. Or Devin, do you think that's too aggressive? Should it be something? Should the funnel be even longer, like another step longer? Should it be to register for the webinar, or should it be to get like a lead magnet or something, and then you're retargeting them later with pitches for the webinar? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that for a live webinar, the first thing can't be the coming to the webinar. There has to be something in front of it. So I totally agree that you need kind of a content calendar before that. And if social media is what you want to use, then you need to be doing something like download the white paper, or putting a video in front of people where you're talking about the topic to get them kind of warmed up, and then hit them with the webinar. And the webinar piece can actually be like the middle part of your funnel. Like, you don't want to stop once you do the webinar. The last part of that funnel is then those people who attended, making sure you're following up with them right away and saying, come in for a meeting. And the people who didn't attend, also following up with them, because they did express interest at some point. They're already kind of in the middle part of your funnel. We don't want to just forget about them. Like, they are so warm prospects that you can touch on afterwards, either with a replay or an invitation to a future event, further content. We don't want to forget, we don't want to think of the webinar as the end piece, because it's not. It's really that middle part of your overall marketing funnel, I think.
Yeah. No, that's great. Let's zoom out. It's not, it doesn't end with a webinar. Yeah, that's a great point. So Barbara's got a couple questions here that I want to get to. Thank you for these questions, Barbara. If someone downloads a paper on Facebook, will I have their email? It's got to be off Facebook. You've got to right, Devin. You got to link somebody off.
So, yeah, there's two options. The more typical way is you would set up a kind of a lead magnet off your website, so a landing page off of Facebook, and there you would collect the info and they would do the download. That can be really complicated if you don't have like a lot of control of your own website. So luckily, Facebook actually does have a lead magnet advertisement goal. So you can use Facebook platform to create a landing page and a download page. You can do it all on the platform. So they can enter in their info and get the download, and you don't have to leave the app. And that is in Facebook Ads Manager. For the goal, you would pick, I think it's lead generation is what it's called, lead something. And you can use their kind of prototype to keep it on the platform and still get that. To get the information from Facebook, you do have to go into your ads manager and download that. And then, you have to use it from there. But you can use, it's somewhat new, you can now use the Facebook platform for lead magnets, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's within the last year, but it's much easier. Like I said, if you're not someone who works on your website, to then set up lead magnets through Facebook instead of dealing with all of that. But there's also third parties that you can use. Like, I think Lead Pages is one where you can kind of build out your own lead magnet system as well if you don't want to be, if you're thinking about LinkedIn or another platform as well.
Yeah, that's right, because you could use that, if you do that all yourself, you can use it in multiple places. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so Barbara, Barbara's saying my comments are not posting, and it does look like they are not. It's a paid ad. Barbara's asking, Devin. It's a paid ad that you were talking about for the for the lead generation. Yeah. So Barbara, you're saying your comments are not posting. Yeah, I'm not actually seeing them show up on the stream post. That's weird, but they're coming through. They're coming through to vMix. So I don't know what is going on there. Are people not seeing? Are you guys seeing Barbara's posts? I'm actually not seeing them. I think something funky might be going on with the comments for this, but I'm getting them, so they're going somewhere. So Barbara is also asking, how often should I post on Facebook if I want to build a funnel quickly? Is the answer as much as possible, Devin? Or
I mean, we have to think about two different things here, right? Like your funnel is kind of separate from your organic Facebook strategy. But you need to have an organic strategy to really have the funnel. So if you're creating Facebook posts, I usually say anywhere from once a day to 3 times a week. That's organic, not paid. That's just like you're posting content on Facebook. Your funnel, you kind of want your funnel to almost be an evergreen funnel in a way. So maybe if you're doing live webinars, you're obviously going to switch out that webinar ad so it has the right date and time. But once you build the funnel, it should, in theory, you can kind of just keep running it and just changing the details of it, like the date and the time. And if the topic, say you're changing the topic. But I want to be clear that, and this is why it's advanced or in depth, as Doug said, because you can't just do this and all of a sudden it works. It is a long game, and you really need to engage in it and say, you know what, I'm going to commit time to doing this and let it build. You can't just put the lead magnet up and then a day later say, I'm going to invite people to a webinar. That's just, you can't rush this process, unfortunately. It does take time to build that audience and to make sure the funnel's working, test out ads. There's no quick fix for this. And that's why I think Doug's point about 5 weeks out and hitting your lists and doing all these other things before we rely on social media advertising if you don't have a funnel set up already. So I don't know if that answers the question, but you should be posting on Facebook regularly if you want to use Facebook as a advertising means in the future, because you need to build thought leadership there. You can't just advertise and not have organic content. So yes, you should be posting regularly, and then the funnel is kind of a separate thing from that.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a long game. It's something you got to be consistent with, and not just do it once and think, oh yeah, that's gonna drive huge results for me. No, that's not how it works. It's a long game. It's a long game. So Barbara, you've got some question marks you put in comments. I don't know if that means you have some additional questions or you're flabbergasted by the lack of your comments showing up in the Facebook post. Let me know if you did have an additional question here. Oh, she does. Let's see here. Let's cursor over here. The funnel is all the people who responded to your post. Who wanted to get your lead magnet.
Right. So everyone who interacted with that ad and downloaded that lead magnet, you would then be retargeting the next part of the funnel at those people. And that's why I'm saying you don't want to just set up the lead magnet and all of a sudden be advertising the webinar, because you don't want to put an ad, if 5 people download it, you're not really going to put an ad in front of 5 people. That won't really be monetarily wouldn't really make sense. So that's why I'm saying this part of it, like creating that funnel and starting at the top with a lead magnet, is kind of a longer process, because you want to have a healthy audience in there, right? We don't want to just be spending money on putting an ad in front of 5 to 10 people. If you do set up a lead magnet and you're getting those email addresses and it's early on and your numbers are low, then just send those people an email inviting them to your webinar. You don't necessarily need to hit them with an advertisement. You could just reach out directly, which I think is sometimes more powerful, getting that direct message from you. You can also, with that part of the funnel with the lead magnet, you can target people too on Facebook who may have clicked on the ad but not actually downloaded it. Those people I would still consider warm because they interacted with that post. So you can expand your audience for that next phase by including people who interacted with the post or maybe visited your Facebook page in the last 30 days. You can expand it out a little bit. The point is, you just don't want to be inviting people to a webinar cold. You can do it. You'll get some. It's not going to be as quality prospects as maybe if they had interacted with your business in some way before.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly mention that Devin did a huge deep dive on Facebook marketing strategy in the advisor client program. So if you remember advisor client, go to the campaign section of the page and find that, because that's going to give you a deep dive on the strategy, this kind of big picture strategy that works on Facebook. But so Matt, I did get your question. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but first I just wanted to kind of finish out these advanced or more in-depth webinar promotional strategies. Although this one is more of a tactic. And Devin, you mentioned this for in your like reminders to give like a resource to get people like engaged and more like mentally in the mental space where they're like ready to attend your webinar. But one tactic I've seen recommended is offering people who attend your webinar live a special resource, like a PDF,
Yes.
like a tip sheet, or like a calendar, or a white paper, or like a book reading list, or something they can download, and it's like an extra value add. Because, and this I think is important, because there is this temptation where, I can't make it, but I'll get the replay. I'll watch it on the replay. No, you won't. No, you won't. Okay, some of you might, but most of you won't.
I am so guilty. I feel like I'm being called out for this.
Yeah, no, I'm calling myself out.
Queen of signing up for things and being like, I want to attend this, and then something happens and I don't have time. But you're right. If someone was like, you can get this free thing for attending live, it probably would motivate me to attend it live.
Yeah, I think something needs to be done, because we do get so many, whether they're called webinars or trainings or master classes, we get invited to something like that all the time. And yeah, I sign up for a lot of them with really little to no intention of watching live. When I do sign up, I'm like, I might attend that, register. So anything you can do to get people to actually come in live, where they're going to be most engaged, you're going to have their attention more than you otherwise would on a replay, for sure. Do it. And offering people a special resource for attending live is a good way to do it. Also, you can do something like a contest. You're going to do a giveaway for people who attend live. You're going to send your book to one lucky winner. Ellen Rogan recently on her Find Your Superpower, Discovering Your Unique Edge webinar, she did a giveaway of her book, Picture Your Prosperity, and we had it on like one of those. I took everybody's name who was live on the webinar, and we put it on a spin wheel. You know what I mean? I don't know what the technical term is for that. But, it goes around.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Sound, and then it slows down and lands on the person, and it was this fun little element. And when Ellen was like, in chat, put your first name if you want to enter to win the book, everybody's like, yeah. So when you do have to let people know ahead of time, though. I mean, it's great. It's a great value add for people who are there to love them more. But it is also a great way to get people to show up live. Like, look, there is going to be a giveaway live on the webinar. If you want to be a part of this giveaway, you got to be on live. That's a great way to do it too.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I will just add, coming soon on Horse's Mouth, we're really talking about kind of building out digital marketing assets for advisors to use, and that is probably going to include some, Facebook ad copy for people to use in the future. And so I've been working on some, and I have been including, if you come live to this webinar, you can get this checklist, and it's all materials that are in Horse's Mouth. So if you're a member of any of our programs, there's always checklists or reprints that you can easily kind of use as your giveaway. And like Doug said, I think that's such a great tactic to get people to attend live, because getting people to sign up for your webinar can be challenging, but it's the easier part. Getting them to actually show up, that is the challenge, and getting them to engage with you afterwards is challenging. So anything you can add to incentivize them to attend live, or to schedule an appointment, that is powerful. And maybe it seems like a bribe, but it's not. They're already interested in the info. It's just an added value to them. Yeah,
exactly. And you just got to keep in mind that you are never going to have a greater chance to book somebody for a meeting or a consultation, at least online, really, than somebody who has been live on your webinar and listened to you talk for like 40 minutes to an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
They're with you. They're super interested. So you want people to get on live. It's not the same on a replay, really. You're doing it live. Take advantage of that and get people in there. Definitely. So okay, something funky is going on with the comments, guys. I'm getting the very few comments are not going through to the stream post, which is unfortunate. They are coming through to me. I don't know, through the API. I don't know what's going on. I think it's on Facebook's end, but do know, guys, that I am receiving your questions and comments. So keep sending them in. All right, we do have a few more questions, but I do have one more tip or tactic, and that is consider partnering with somebody for the webinar who has a large following themselves. You see this on podcasts all the time, where hosts of podcasts will be guests on another person's podcast, bring over their audience, and also get the audience of the podcast they're on to find out about them. And it's like this huge, cross promotional mix. I can't tell you how many podcasts I've subscribed to because a podcast that I enjoy had somebody on, what they were talking about was interesting, so I go and I find their podcast and I subscribe to it. You can do the same thing.
Me too. It happened to me this week. Yeah. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing with webinars, where either you are like a guest presenter on somebody else's webinar and people find out about you on that webinar, you're getting in front of their audience, or you have that guest come on your webinar and they're inviting all their audience to attend the webinar where you're going to be on. So there's a lot of mutual benefit that can go on, and of course people are open to this because who wouldn't want to expand the audience for their webinar. So consider doing that.
Right, and that's not just social media following. Like if you're partnering with someone, make sure you're both sending out emails to your list, because your lists are really the gold. Like those are warm people who know about you.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that case, maybe you even send it to your clients because you're going to have the special guest with you, and it might be a new offering that maybe you haven't offered before. And again, they might be able to invite people. So don't forget about like your list that you have offline too. So that's really your bread and butter. Those people have expressed interest. And if you have someone else, a different business you're matching with, those are two lists that you can then hit double the people, and that's kind of free marketing for you.
Yeah. So Devin, I think we're straining your internet connection a little bit, so I'm going to degrade your return feed a little bit. Save on some bandwidth here. We still got you.
Okay.
But okay. So did I have one last thing? I don't think so. Yeah, that was the last one. So okay, let's move on to some questions here. So Matt, I'm gonna wait on yours a little bit longer because it's a little bit unrelated. But I did want to say about the list. That's kind of why I started the stream saying like the first thing you need to do is you need to email and invite your list, because those are the people that love you, that are interested, and those are the people who are gonna comment in the webinar and be really engaged, and it's infectious. You want those people to know about your thing and to be on your thing. So let's see, Barbara, how do you know if they clicked on the ad? And I believe this is a continuation, Devin, of a Facebook ad. Just want to quickly.
Facebook tracks everything, so they might not tell you like the exact name of the person, but you'll be able to say, I want to target people who interacted with this post, or who visited my Facebook page in the last 90 days, things like that. So if you're doing a lead magnet, you'll be able to identify everyone who did go through the entire thing and downloaded it. They're not going to give you the name of everyone who clicked on it, but you will be able to target that kind of abstract audience of people who have interacted with ads or posts in the past.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if Facebook knows the flavor of Pepsi somebody was sipping when they clicked on the ad.
Yeah, they know what device you are using. Yeah. I mean, they know everything. They don't give you all of that info, but you can target kind of these custom audiences that Facebook will create for you.
Yeah, and that's the superpower of Facebook there. Okay, so Gregory has asked, the whole comment's not on here, Devin, so I'll read it out here. Good ideas. As a Facebook novice, I tend to leave a meeting like this thinking, how do I start? Is there anything in writing that explains step 1, 2, on down the line, etc.?
That's a great question. And that's why I always stress that, Facebook is complicated when you're getting started. I don't want to diminish it and say, anyone can do this, because it's not true. It does take time and resources. So if you are a Horse's Mouth Advisor client member, as Doug mentioned, I did a campaign earlier this year that was all about Facebook strategy. And we actually have a beginner Facebook campaign on there too that kind of talks about just breaking down Facebook Ads Manager, from each level. So very beginner, high level. These are the different decisions you have to make when you're creating an ad. If you're not a Horse's Mouth member, I will say that Facebook itself has a lot of really good resources and trainings on Facebook ads. It's called their Blueprint course, and it's free. And they have different videos on different topics, and it will at least get you to the point where you can, set up an ad and understand the different kinds of ads, what you want to optimize for. It doesn't necessarily get so into like the creative aspect of creating copy and headlines and images that work. But if you spend time, researching and looking at ads you're seeing on your feed, go through that Blueprint course, it will help kind of get you a little bit more accustomed to Facebook. And like I said earlier, just to kind of self-promote here, we are at Horse's Mouth really working on digital marketing assets for our subscribers in the coming year. So we are working on more Facebook programming and different materials that may help advisors in this process.
Yeah, horsesmouth.com/advisor client if you want to learn more about that program. So Matt, I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long. Thank you for your patience. Matt's question is, and he of course is having problems with the comments as well. Oh no, that's not your question. Where was your question? Here we go. What's the best way to start building an email list for the future? I mean, offering a lead magnet.
Lead gen.
Yeah, where people can.
And that doesn't have to be on Facebook too. You can do that on your website. Of course, you want to kind of promote it in places that people who aren't visiting your website might see, but definitely have it on your website too. I think people overlook like the free opportunities they have in front of them, because we always hear about these more advanced things like Facebook and LinkedIn and all this stuff, but we sometimes forget, like, we have this website that when people are Google searching, they're going to click on. How do we make sure we're capturing people who visit your website? And having a lead magnet form on your website is a great opportunity, because number one, they're looking at your website, so they obviously have a problem that you maybe could solve. They're interested in it. You've heard of you. Offering like a lead magnet, whether it's a white paper or an ebook or even like a video I've seen people do. That's just a way for them to get to know you before they kind of take the next step and call you for an appointment or sign up for a webinar. So don't overlook building your list off of social media too, right? Like we've done that for years. Social media has only been, relevant in the last 10 years or so, but I'm sure many of you were doing lead magnets on your website before or in other ways. So don't forget that. But lead magnet is definitely the best way to build out an email list, because you're offering content, educational content to people in exchange for their information. And that's kind of like the best deal you could have, right? If they have a pain point and you can solve it, and all they have to give you is their email address, people are going to do that.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point about, utilizing, your resources like your website. And remember too, that when you do advertise on social media platforms, you are of course on rented land, right? You are at the whim of these platforms. And if they decide that, they don't like running ads by people named Matt, then, tomorrow they could make sure that you don't get as good of results as you otherwise would have. Of course, I'm joking, but, little things like that, they can change things. The game can change.
Yes.
And what worked for you, today might not work for you tomorrow. It's completely out of your control. It's completely out of your control. Whereas your website, you have complete control over that and the messaging on there and how people are, moving through your funnel. And I think, too, that it's really powerful to do a little, do some content marketing where you are doing a podcast or an article or doing a video, and then at the end you are, mentioning this resource that people can get if they go to this link and give you their email. And it's a related thing that people that found value in that piece of content are just naturally going to find, more value in and be interested in. And that's kind of, I think, the crux of how you get people to join your mailing list through a lead magnet. But okay, so we had that's all of them. We did have some issues apparently with comments on Facebook today. But Devin, do you have any concluding thoughts, or we all
I
set
would
here?
just say, I mean, we've been saying for months now, webinars are kind of like the it thing right now. They still are. I think they're here to stay. We were talking about this internally at Horse's Mouth yesterday of what changes have we seen in the last 6 months that are kind of here to stay even when things go back to normal. And I think webinars is one of them. So I think that kind of investing in your lead up strategy and everything that Doug and I have been talking about is really important. Like, we're not just saying this to do for the next 3 months. Like, these are action items that you can take, for the rest of your business and your career too.
Yeah. Even when you get back to doing in-person seminars, even when you're back meeting and greeting people, you still can utilize this. The cat's out of the bag, right?
Right.
Everybody now is realizing the power of webinars and other, digital marketing solutions. So it's worth spending the time and getting your head around, how do I promote these things to get the most engaged attendance that I can. So I hope you found today's tips helpful, and next we're going to wrap it up here. So until next time, again, every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, we do go live with the Advisors Digital Toolbox, and we'd love for you to join us next week. So
see you next week.
Until then, take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.